Hello everyone and welcome to this video by Letterpress. Today I'm going to be showing a little bit about my process in printing and sort of how I work with this machine. It's a 7x11 Chandler & Price clamshell press or platen press depending on which you call it. I'm just going to be giving some insights and a voiceover of some of the things I do to get set up and show you a little bit of how my make ready is put together. But before we really get started, I do want to mention that these machines can be really dangerous, and it's important that you get the proper instruction from someone who really knows what they're doing. A video is no substitute for an apprenticeship or working with a printer closely. So that being said, let's get started. Okay, so right now you can see that I'm just getting the press inked up. I mix my colors using oil-based inks and a Pantone mixing book. So I do have one of those, and that really makes a big difference in getting the right colors. It takes a few minutes for it to ink up for me. It's a little bit slower. I use all three rollers because I think it distributes the ink a little bit more evenly than just the two. And I actually keep my ink really light. You'll notice that when I print really slow. Like I often let the form ink more than once, maybe 2 times before I actually take the print. It's just sort of how my roller height's set up. Everything kind of works together that I keep a much thinner layer of ink than some printers do, and I print much more slowly. I like to check every print and make sure that it's matched up with the color and sort of be careful so I waste a lot less stock. So here I've stopped the press and I'm going to get the form. I've already lined everything up. I will show lineup in another video. I have my own sort of way of doing that. But I'm backing up the flywheel here because my belt's kind of a little wobbly. So I'm going to place something in the press here and we're going to take a test impression. Okay, so there's a few parts of this video that get a little bit tedious where you'll see me sort of putting things in the press, taking them out, looking at them, setting them down, and kind of moving slowly. At this stage, it's really important to make sure that the impression is correct and the ink color is right so that when I actually start feeding, I don't have to check it so often and I can kind of just feed the prints and trust that they're right. There have been plenty of times in the past where I kind of moved a little too quick and took maybe 15-20 impressions without noticing an issue. So I tend to print really slowly. Now at this stage I'm printing on a few scrap pieces I have with the previous color already lined up so that I can check the impression depth and the way the color is laying down. This stock right here is 600 GSM Crane Lettera in Pearl, so it's really thick and I have to feed it a little bit slower because it's harder to kind of get it into the gauge pins there. The gauge pins I'm using are compressible pins that I made myself using scrap photopolymer and double stick foam tape, and I'll show those in the video where I actually teach a little bit about lineup. But for here you can watch me take a few impressions. I'm checking out the color, I'm seeing kind of how it's laying down, and I'm checking the backs of the print as well to make sure there's no ink transfer to the backs of the paper. Now at this stage I noticed that the impression was a little bit too deep. It wasn't matching up with the first color. And I also saw there was a little bit of cracking that was appearing in the prints themselves. So what I'm doing is I'm lifting up my tip and bail and I'm taking out some press board from behind my packing. I set up my packing in, at least I think, a sort of unique way where the top sheet is always a transparency. So it's always sort of acetate, and that way it's easy to clean off. I really don't like wasting Timpen paper because it's kind of hard to come by. So I've actually taped it down on 3 sides, and you can see kind of my blue tape tab that slips under the Timpen bail. It makes it really easy to add packing and take it out because all I have to do is lift the Timpen bail and pull out any extra sheets that I need or add any wedges if there's low areas in the print, and it's really quick to sort of get that adjusted without having to undo all of the packing or mess with my lineup. So I think this is kind of the easiest way on this press to adjust my packing and get the right impression. Okay, so I stopped the press again and I'm doing the same thing. I felt that there was still a little bit too much impression, When you have a really large form, as you can kind of see with the gray, it sort of took up the whole page, you're going to get less impression because your pressure is sort of spreading out over a larger surface of the plate in this case. So when I switched to the smaller area, this shorter pink coral line, it created a lot more impression than I needed, so I was able to take out a little bit of packing and get that adjusted to avoid not only the cracking in this really, really thick paper, but to get the impression to match the first color. Okay, so at this stage I've taken a few prints, I've got my impression depth right. Now I'm just sort of checking the color consistency as I print. You'll notice a few points that I'll let a print happen one after the other. I'm sort of checking the ink coverage. I find, because I tend to keep my ink sort of thin, that I do usually need to let the rollers run across the form twice to get a really nice even distribution. Otherwise I get what's called ink starvation, where areas that have rolled over previous parts of the plate have less ink and cause some mottling in the print. So here I'm comparing it with the ink swatch that the client sent and making sure that I'm able to get nice even color throughout the run. Okay, so here I've switched the camera angle a little bit so you can kind of see how I feed into these pins. So the pins are kind of just the right height to hold this really thick paper. It works a little easier when I'm working with 300 GSM or something lighter, but in this case I wanted really thick paper because we're going to be doing some edge painting that's in the next video. So you'll notice I print really slowly. I have the machine set to run as slow as it will run, which is still relatively fast. It's important that you keep your hands out of the way once that thing starts closing. Every once in a while you'll kind of see me touch a print again when it's already been sitting in the pins. That's just to make sure that it's seated evenly in both pins. Often I kind of try and go for the two pins at the bottom first, getting the card just to sort of sit there, and then on the second pass I'll just slide the print over into the side pin. That pretty much sums up kind of all my main points in the printing process. In the next video, I'm hoping to show a little bit more about what I do to get things set up before I actually get to the printing stage. So that includes things like checking the roller height, making my gauge pins, and getting the lineup, which is probably, I think, the most challenging aspect of working on these presses, is getting it just perfectly arranged so that your prints come out consistent each time. So if there's anything that I didn't cover that you'd like to see in a future video, just let me know in the comments. At this stage, I'm going to speed it up so we can get to the end, and then if you look for part 2, I'll show you how I did the edge painting on these cards.